What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now taking us into Durham, North Carolina. We are going to talk about the Duke Blue Devils out of the ACC. A very exciting team last season is changing some things up, but they are poised for another exciting year in 2025. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I want to thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you'd like to support it even further, then please do what it says right below me. Hit that subscribe button, and you might as well ring the bell, because turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss an upload, especially during prediction season, and especially not one of your favorite team. I just started my new job and am now in the sports media professional world. And if you want to see all the cool stuff I do in the industry, as well as get updates on what goes on this very YouTube channel, you can give me a follow on any social media of your choosing, especially the two right down there. It's at TailgateNate29 on Twitter or X, whatever your preference for the platform, and Instagram, and you can even email me, tailgatenate29@gmail.com. I want to thank all of you for supporting and interacting with me in the channel, however you may be doing so. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Duke Blue Devils in 2025, coached by second-year man, Manny Diaz. And man, was it a season for the Duke Blue Devils last year. A 9-3 record, and kind of surprising a fair bit of people with how successful they were in the ACC last season. Can this be one of the dark horse teams to go win the ACC, or at very least make the ACC championship game in 2025? I think so, and you're about to find out why here in this video. We are first going to go through a roster overview, in which case the offense is going to be over here to the left, and the defense is going to be over here to the right. And at the end of the video, we'll go through the Duke football schedule. I'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. And this video overall will tell you what I think about the Duke Blue Devils here in 2025. But before we do get started, I want to talk about some numbers right down below me. Returning production numbers are according to ESPN, and they do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. Recruiting and transfer portal class ranks are both according to 24/7 Sports. Did I say returning production according to ESPN? If not, then there you go. Let us start over here with the offense, and your offensive coordinator is Jonathan Brewer. Let's talk the most important position on the field, one may say, and that's the quarterback position. Malik Murphy transferred over to this team from Texas last year and had a really, really good season. 2,933 yards, 26 touchdowns, did throw 12 picks. That was a problem for him last season. And again, that is as a true pocket passer. Averaged only 7 yards per completion, though. Did throw the football 421 times. So for a guy that threw the ball over 400 times, failed to get over 3,000 yards, you could say it was a little bit of a mixed bag, around 60% completion percentage, but overall, not a bad season for Malik Murphy at all. He has since, however, transferred over to Corvallis. He will now be with the Oregon State Beavers. So, who did you bring in to replace Malik Murphy? Guys, I think it's an upgrade, because Darian Mensah is coming in, where he balled out with the Tulane Green Wave last season, through well more than 100 less passes than Malik Murphy last year. In his stat line, in my opinion, guys, it looks better. Maybe not statistically in terms of numbers, but man, what a season it was for Darian Mensah in New Orleans last season. 2,723 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions on around 66% completion percentage. Not the guy that's going to get outside of the pocket and run a whole lot, but did have 132 yards and 1 touchdown. Yes, sack yardage is included in that as well. So this is going to be a massive year for this Duke team if Darian Mensah can do what he did last season, and I think even improve off of it, which there definitely is room to do so with some of the pieces that he's going to have around him. I'll tell you about them here in just a little bit. I think Darian Mensah can really explode with this program, have a really successful season under Manny Diaz with this Duke program. And again, Jonathan Brewer, I think, is a pretty solid offensive coordinator that will utilize Darian Mensah in a very good way. Star Thomas is going to transfer out, your leading rusher from last season, 871 yards and 7 touchdowns. He, of course, has now found a home with a new program, but you get a massive return here for Duke. Not in terms of production from last season, only 32 carries for 86 yards, but you look at the previous 2 seasons before that, 2023 and 2022, almost 12 yards and 11 touchdowns combined between the two seasons for Jaquez Moore. He was hurt last season. He's going to be back from injury. And you're also going to see Peyton Jones become that number 2 running back again, much like he was behind Star Thomas last season, where he rushed for 317 yards and a tray of touchdowns. That's the word I was looking for. Why can't I think of the word trio? A trio of touchdowns for Peyton Jones last season. So you pair him with Jaquez Moore coming back from injury. I think you got a pretty solid tandem right there in the running back room. Your top 2 receivers are now in the pros from last season. That is going to be the likes of Jordan Moore, so another J Moore on this team. He's now with the Cincinnati Bengals after an 861-yard, 8-touchdown performance last season. And then Eli Penkel was the team's leading receiver in terms of catches, 60 catches, almost had 800 yards, just 2 yards shy of that mark, and led the team in receiving touchdowns with 9, and that included an 86-yard bomb from Malik Murphy last season as well. So those 2 guys, really big losses. Those are the only 2 guys over 500 yards, and obviously the 2 biggest pieces in this wide receiver room from last season. However, you take a look at what Duke does have coming back. Quayshawn Brown is going to be coming back, was the number 3 overall receiver last season. Still had 41 catches, 445 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really good stuff for him. Samir Higgins is also coming back, but then you do have a pair of transfers coming in as well. Cooper Barcade is coming over from Harvard, where he was, I believe, one of the Ivy League's better receivers. And then Andrew Anthony is coming over here after posting 429 yards of production at Michigan in 2023. Just 1 catch for 4 yards, I believe, was one of the many injuries in the Oklahoma wide receiver room last season. He stays healthy. He'll perform well for this Blue Devil team. Nicky Dalmolin is going to be testing the NFL waters out of the tight end room. He is gone, 167 yards on 2 touchdowns on just 11 catches last season, but that's still some really solid production and a good average for Nicky Dalmolin last year. The tight end room, I think this season is going to work more as a duo. It kind of did of sorts last year, but Dalmolin was the main guy, and I think everybody around this Duke program knew that. At least that's how I felt looking at this tight end room. So I think it's going to act as more of a duo this year, with Jeremiah Hasley stepping in front. Jake Taylor is sitting in the second string according to ourlives.com, but I think he's still going to get some solid playing time there as well. And then as far as the offensive line goes, Caleb Crange is your lone starter that does leave. Experience, however, is going to fill in the gaps on this offensive line, and it is really, really prevalent. Returners will make for a very strong fortitude up front. Darian Mensah, I got to be honest with all of you, tell you what I think. I think he's an upgrade from Malik Murphy, and I still think Malik Murphy's a pretty solid quarterback. I think Darian Mensah is a better one, and again, that's not necessarily me saying I think he's going to have a better season here at Duke numbers-wise or this and that. No. I just think he's the better football player. So I do think that Darian Mensah is a guy coming in here that I think can have a really, really good season, especially with the pieces around him. You got 2 really solid running backs. I think the wide receiver room is going to be, or I should say, has plenty of options for Darian Mensah to choose from. Tight end room, you got a really experienced offensive line in front of you that only allowed, I'll get the number, 12 sacks last season. You could post another number pretty similar, and this Duke offense could be one to watch out for in the ACC. Now, when you move on over, talk about this defense, now going to be led by Jonathan Patke this season. Plenty of steps forward and back in various ways. When you take a look at the Duke statistical numbers and compare the 2023 defense to the 2024 defense, there are some areas where they improved, some areas where they regressed, and overall it makes for a pretty confusing takeaway for this Duke defense year to year. But the takeaway that I'm going to make is this: 2025 should be really, really fruitful for this program. What do I mean by that? I think it's going to take a step in the right direction, and I think it's going to take a step in the right direction in a very big way. Manny Diaz, again, has served the defensive coordinator role at previous programs before. He'll take what he's learned, take his defensive knowledge, of which he has tons of it, and apply it this season as he did last year. Again, some improvements were made. He took a step back in others. Overall, the defense should take a step forward here in 2025. A trio of defensive line seniors have exhausted their eligibility. They are gone. And a couple of them, some really darn big pieces here on this team. However, your most notable defensive lineman, Anthony Vincent, Wesley Williams. Those two guys are going to be coming back here to this team. As far as Wesley Williams, 8 sacks for him last season. He did lead the team in that department. Vincent Anthony with 5 sacks. Those guys are going to occupy the 2 edges. You also do have Aaron Hall coming back as a defensive tackle, and Josiah Green from Dartmouth is coming over here as a graduate transfer, who I think should see some really good playing time. Again, you see his name right there on screen. And there you go. We'll fix the typo in his name as well, Josiah. I apologize profusely for that. Top 3 tacklers are all going to leave the linebacking unit. They read off as follows. Your leading tackler in Ozzie Nicholas is gone. Had triple-digit tackles at exactly the century mark last season. Also did have an interception. Alex Howard is also gone. 6.5 sacks last season. And then finally, you're going to be losing Cameron Bergeron, who had 4.5 sacks last year. All 3 of those guys played some massive parts in this linebacker room. In fact, they were your top 3 leading tacklers from last season. So obviously, those are going to be some really big losses. Well, Trey Freeman is set to be the next general in charge, 67 tackles and half a sack for him at last season. Again, some solid depth is going to be playing around him and behind him. Nick Morris is another redshirt senior, just like Trey Freeman, that's going to be playing linebacker for you. And then you do overall have some fairly inexperienced depth, but then you have the sort of combination linebacker and defensive back player. I believe playing what they call, yes, the star position. Jaden Francois is going to be transferring over from Utah State, formerly of Central Florida there at UCF, has posted back-to-back 50 tackle seasons. Again, you can mention him when we move on in to the defensive back room. Now, a very talented pair of safeties is going to be leaving this team. Most notably, however, it'll be led by Jalen Stinson. Jalen Stinson is going to be gone. 67 tackles, had 8 passes defended last season. As well, again, as some other members of that secondary going to be gone. However, you do return plenty of really good players. You do have Terry Moore, who is going to be coming back. I do, again, guys, apologize for the typos. Not Trey Moore. Terry Moore will be coming back, along with Chandler Rivers, Deshaun Stone, the aforementioned Jaden Francois, as well as, again, Caleb Weaver going to be coming in through the transfer portal. So a pretty good group of defensive backs here for Duke this season. And, of course, kickers are people, too. Let's show them some love. Special teams group is all coming back for this Duke team this upcoming season. So what have we learned about this Duke team? I think as long as Darian Mensah takes a step forward, which I think he's very capable of from his Tulane Green Wave day, or his Tulane Green Wave season into this season, the pieces around him are going to fall into place, and the defense should take a big step forward this season. How's the schedule look? Well, wait no longer to find out, because here is the Duke football schedule for 2025. But before we dive on into predicting this mess, some numbers right down below me I want to make you aware of. These odds are courtesy of FanDuel. No, it's not me telling you to go place your money. It is simply just a very nice visual aid to show some context for how good the odds makers think Duke is going to be this upcoming season. And they think, again, Duke, in my opinion, looks like a dark horse in the odds betting market as well. As far as winning the ACC, they have the 6th best odds to do so, but they're up there with another notable dark horse in Georgia Tech for sort of that running to win an ACC title game. The odds makers think a lot has to happen, and yeah, it's true for Duke to go win a national championship, but to me, after what Duke did last season, that win total at 6.5, bulletin board material for Manny Diaz, absolutely. Let's take a look now at the Duke football schedule, starting off with this game against Elon. Oh, by the way, those odds current as of recording this video, if I didn't say that already. Duke should be able to beat Elon. They're going to have no trouble there with the Phoenix in that first game of the season. But then, oh boy, you get a really fun one coming up against the Illinois Fighting Illini. And I am really high on Brett Bielema's group this season. Luke Altmaier is going to be coming back. Aiden Lafferty should be a really good running back for them, taking over that number 1 role. Same thing with Caden Fegan coming in behind him to be that number 2 guy. I think the running back room going to be pretty darn solid. Wide receiver room does have to replace a couple nice pieces, but you brought in some really talented portal guys. Offensive line, I think, has pretty much every, if not all their starters back. Defensive front loaded up through the portal with some really talented guys. You're returning a sack machine in Gabe Jackas, a secondary full of talent. And I think they're going to be able to slow down Duke, especially offensively. I think that Illinois defense is going to be really, really good. And Luke Altmaier silenced his doubters last season. He can continue to do the same thing here in 2025. I really like this Fighting Illini team a lot. They are not only my Big Ten dark horse, but my college football playoff dark horse, kind of like how Indiana was that last season. Not personally for me, but it did prove to be that way. Guys, I'm really high on this Illini team. I love everything that Brett Bielema has got. I think he's got a really talented group, and I think Illinois comes on the road and beats the Duke Blue Devils. Not without a fight. Duke has got a lot of things that can give them some havoc and a lot of good offensive pieces that will test that Fighting Illini defensive unit. I just do think, again, with how high I am on this Illinois program, happens sometimes. Illinois, one of the teams I'm high on, I do think they beat Duke. And then how about this for a storyline? Darian Mensah has to go on the road to play his former team in his former home stadium with the Tulane Green Wave. Again, you're starting to see a lot more Power 4 programs go on the road to play Group of 5 programs, a thing that I think is going to be overall really, really good for the sport. Caden Samanza is going to be coming over from Ball State, a guy that really excelled over there with the Cardinals, and now under John Sumrall. He can definitely do the same thing here. He's another really, really good quarterback, but you got to replace a ton of talent on this Tulane Green Wave team on the front end and on the backside, or I should say, I don't know what I'm talking about, on the offensive end and on the defensive end as well. Literally all over the place. There's just a ton of guys that Tulane, really, really talented players that Tulane's going to have to try to fill the holes for, most notably Makai Hughes at running back. Some top receivers are gone. Some top producers on the defensive end in pretty much every level are going to be gone off of this Green Wave team as well. This really just is a Tulane team that, while I think is still going to be pretty solid, the star power is not quite there like it was last year. And one of their stars, Darian Mensah, is now over here with Duke. I think he's going to be motivated to beat his former team, and I think that's exactly what he does right here. Although a very close game, because Tulane going to be one of the better Group of 5 teams still, it is going to be a win, in my opinion, for the Duke Blue Devils this upcoming season. NC State is up next here for this Duke team, and NC State, I think, is going to end up being a little bit of an up and down team this season. CJ Bailey's going to be playing quarterback for you. They do have some solid pieces overall. Yeah, they're losing some good talent through the transfer portal. Defensively, we know how Dave Doran's groups usually play, but there's some improvement to be made on the defensive side of the ball. A few transfers are going to help there. NC State, for me, is one of those teams I see being a little up and down in the ACC this year. I think Duke's got a little bit more talent, especially offensively. If NC State's defense can't get back to the usual Dave Doran standard, I got this one as a win for the Duke Blue Devils. Okay, Syracuse is coming up next, and look, Syracuse is one of the worst teams as far as returning production among Power 4 teams goes. They have to replace everybody. Quarterback, running back, wide receivers, defensive linemen, offensive linemen. I mean, the whole 9 yards. Syracuse has got to replace an absolute crap ton of pieces. Ricky Collins is going to be transferring in over from LSU to play quarterback here for this team. Again, obviously, he was behind Garrett Nussmeier. He's not going to start at LSU. Decided to come over to Syracuse, and there still are some pretty solid pieces, and there's a good mix of veteran depth and some really good young pieces as well, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense actually going to be really darn experienced this season as far as class and again, at how much football these guys have seen, whether that's playing time, sidelines, doesn't matter. Seniors bring it experience. This to me is a Syracuse team that, while they're probably going to end up taking a step back from where they were last season, which with Duke was a 9-3 record, guys, I think Fran Brown's a really good head coach, and I think Syracuse is going to fight to win some games that they, quote, shouldn't this upcoming season. And I think this Duke game is one of those. The Carrier Dome, very underrated as far as tougher places to play. And I just, again, think that Duke is a team that sets itself up, maybe not inherently, but this season I see them losing one game that they maybe, again, necessarily shouldn't. And again, that game is right here. Syracuse replaced with a ton of talent, but I still really like that head coach in Fran Brown. I do think Duke suffers their second loss of the season right there, but they will bounce back on the second leg of a back-to-back road trip against Cal without Fernando Mendoza. Without Fernando Mendoza, Jaden Ott, J. Michael, the Sturdivant, as well as some other really, really talented pieces offensively with Cal, I think the offense is going to struggle to get going, at least to the degree it did last season. Cal will take a step back. Duke will win that game on the road in Berkeley. All right, or I should say in Berkeley. You're getting into a pretty rough part of the schedule here now because you got Georgia Tech at home. Again, one of the sleepers in the ACC, but you do have a bye week before and after it. So, in my opinion, you have a bye week before your two biggest games of the season. That's against Georgia Tech and that's against Clemson. The two sleepers in the ACC, in my opinion, going head to head to battle it out right here. And I think it's going to be an excellent game. However, Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, you get Malik Rutherford and Isaiah Cannon back, as well as Eric Rivers and Dean Patterson coming in through the portal to play wide receiver for you. Haynes King, the quarterback, Jamal Haynes, the running back. Obviously, Malachi the Hosley is also coming in to play running back for him. Some really good defensive pieces, especially in that back end, and the linebacker and Kyle Efford, defensive lineman Jordan Vandenberg. I think Georgia Tech, again, is more of a sleep. Well, actually, technically, Duke is more of a sleeper than Georgia Tech is because of how the odds market is set. But Georgia Tech, I think, is a better football team. This game, I think, is going to go back and forth. It's going to be a real rough battle. But I do think Georgia Tech is going to come out on top of this one. I like what the Yellow Jackets got and the way they fit just a little bit more than what Manny Diaz has in Durham. That's why I think Georgia Tech wins the game. On the road at Clemson, yeah, even after the bye week, I don't think Duke is going to win this one. Clemson, to me, is a team that just is going to be absolutely loaded this season. Cade Klubnik is coming back to play quarterback. Gideon Davidson is a stud freshman running back that's going to be really, really good for this Tiger team. They're going to have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, and if anybody out there thinks that Clemson defense is starting to get a little bit softer or they don't have the same intensity that they did, you're going to be proven very, very wrong this year when Tom Allen comes in to coach that defense. Discipline, intensity, it'll all come back in its fullest form for the Clemson Tigers this year. And it's a team I like a lot. One of the favorites to go win the national championship. Now, I want to talk about this UConn game for a little bit because UConn to me is honestly a very, very interesting team this upcoming season. This is a team that is very, very well coached. They are very well coached by Jim Mora, 8-4 last season, and he's bringing in some really talented portal pieces, especially on the defensive side of the ball this season. Now, they are going to be breaking in some newer pieces on both sides of the ball and things of that nature. Going to have to replace some starters that got lost, etc., etc. However, I think this UConn team is really, really talented, and they do play a couple of power 4 opponents, and I think that this UConn team can give them some fits. Now, do I see them beating Duke? I do not. But on the top of it being a road game, UConn's very well coached. They got some good talent. Who knows, man? I definitely could see Duke having a little bit of trouble here. I do think at very least they will escape with the win, if not beat UConn fairly handedly. But I do think Duke a little too talented for UConn. And Duke wins out from there. I do think they beat Virginia, losing a lot of really talented pieces. That's a team that it just feels like they have to break through eventually. But with all they lost in the portal, a lot of uncertainty there for me. North Carolina, to me, is a team as the rivalry booms on the gridiron. How are they going to do with Bill Belichick? Does it transfer over from the NFL to college? All very interesting questions. I think North Carolina, much like NC State, going to be an up and down team this year. And then Wake Forest might be one of the worst teams in the ACC this season. Brings me to a record of 8-4. Yes, a little bit of a step back, but when you take a look at this schedule, Illinois and even Tulane, some really tough non-conference games, and they play some of the top teams here, but the schedule also in a way is favorable. You have no Miami, you have no SMU, you have no Louisville, Duke. Watch out for this team, man. If they get hot and go on a run, they can make some noise in the ACC this year. Let me know what you think about the Blue Devils in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.